welcome to the very first video on this channel and also the very first deck tech on this channel. Definitely something I'm looking forward to, definitely something I'm looking forward to continuing. With that being said, I got a grape soda in my hand. And a deck on my mind, so let's get right into it. But first, a short little message from our sponsor today, and that is... Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I bet you're here for that sponsor video that guy was just talking about in the last clip. Well, good for you. I'm here to deliver on that message. All right, so let's go ahead and get into that. Fuel your game, all right? Find your crew and everything else that you need down at Slice and Dice Game Cafe. Slice and Dice Game Cafe is local to South Bend, Indiana, and they're serving up everything you need. They got pizzas, paninis, hot dogs, quesadillas, you name it, baby, they got it. Well, maybe not that, all right? But well, they always got cheesecake on the menu, and you know I'm a big boy waiting on my cheesecake at the end of the night. So most definitely something unique to this game store. Besides that, they offer all your 40K, all your Magic, all your Pokemons, every single hobby that you were part of. They got Alt Action Conquest. I'm talking all of that. So if there's a game that you're interested in, come on down to Slice and Dice with plenty of table space for you, your crew, and maybe you'll find a few others to join you. So come on, get your game on, get your grub on down at Slice and Dice Game Cafe. Alright, Magic players, let's go ahead and get into it and start talking about the deck here. The deck we're covering today is Koma, the Cosmos Serpent, card out of Kaldheim originally. The showcase art is absolutely beautiful. If you got one, let me know. I would love to have it. All right, so let's talk about Koma real quick. Koma, 3 generic, 2 green, and 2 blue for a legendary creature Serpent. This creature spell cannot be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent and choose 1. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities cannot be activated this turn. Or you can sack that serpent and give Koma indestructible until the end of the turn. Definitely a strong card, definitely a strong commander. Definitely the kind of commander that when you sit down at a table makes you public enemy number 1. So definitely something you want to consider when you sit down to play this card. Another thing to consider, looking at this commander and looking at the mana value. It's a high mana value commander, so we're going to want to get Koma out fast so we can start abusing this power real quickly. Another thing, this can't be countered. So if you're playing in a meta with a lot of counter spells or a lot of blue decks where they're like, nah, I think I'm going to do my thing, and you're just going to sit there and watch, this is a great way to get around that. Beyond that, once Koma's on the table and you pass your turn, that very next upkeep, it becomes a problem. It starts getting out these 3/3 Koma Coil Serpents. Now, keep in mind, they did just reprint these Koma Coil Serpents with the new Koma Coils, but these suckers are still expensive. So if you got any of these tokens, keep trying to find more of them because you're going to need them. Beyond that, it becomes such a problem because afterwards it's hard to remove. It can really only be removed by exile effects because of that ability to give it indestructible. So definitely something that we want to think about. The biggest theme beyond that in my deck is I don't want to do the standard, just make lots of tokens, make lots of Koma Coils, swing with 3/3s. This deck's very much capable of that, but the name of this deck is Oops, More Komas. And that's because we're finding every way to copy this commander and throwing it in the deck. So that's going to be the focus of the deck. That's the focus of my deck. And we got a couple of niche ways, a couple of unique ways that we're going to do that. And that's going to lead us into our first section of cards to talk about. The first section that we're going to talk about is the ramp section. Like I said, 7 mana commander is a long way to go. So let's go ahead and start talking about how we're going to get there. And of course, we'll cover the first card, the card that is in every commander deck that I have, Soul Ring. If you don't know this card, it's real easy. 1 mana artifact, taps to add 2. That's it for that. Then we've got some of the other classics in the 1-drop slot. We've got Lawn War Elves, Birds of Paradise, Elvish Mystic, and all those creatures, they simply just tap to add 1 mana. As we move into our 2-drop slot, we're looking at a couple of different things. First thing being another commander staple, Arcane Signet, Nature's Lore. The good thing about Nature's Lore is it searches for a forest card, so you can grab any forest in your deck, meaning if you're playing one of the dual lands with that basic subtyping, you can also get it with Nature's Lore. We're also running 3 visits. It has the same exact ruling as Nature's Lore, so definitely something to check out, definitely something I like running in my decks. And then we got my man, my boy, the classic Steve or Secure Tribe Elder. If you're not running this card in your green decks, then I feel sorry for you because, Steve, man, he's great. He's that card that you're going to have on your battlefield until your opponent's end step. And then you're saying, see you later, Steve. It was fun while it lasted. He's a great blocker. He's great at doing everything that you need him to do. And that's going to follow up with Rampant Growth. Classic commander card. If you got it, play it. If you're in green, this card's almost in every deck, so I don't feel like I need to explain it too much to you. Moving into our 3-drop slots, we got a couple of the classics, such as Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. Alright, both of these cards do the same thing. The only difference is one's arcane and one's not. So, search your library for 2 basic lands, put 1 on the battlefield tapped and 1 into your hand. Definitely a good way to make sure that you're getting those land drops and also move on. And then we're running Lawn War Visionary. I really like this card. 3 mana for a mana dork that draws you a card when it enters is not bad at all. I think a lot of people don't like playing this card because it's 3 mana and, well, it's just a mana dork. But, that ability to draw a card, it can be particularly strong, especially if you have nothing going on but mana dorks. So, definitely something good that I love running. Another thing I like to run in this deck is Intish Restoration. This is an instant speed, sack a land and search your library for 2 basic lands and put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. However, if we control creature with power 4 or greater, instead search your library for 3 basic lands and put them on the battlefield tapped. This can be pretty easy to accomplish, especially if we're getting Koma out there, getting some of our other cards out there. 4 power is not that big in this game, so definitely something that we could run. Moving on to our 4 mana slot and the last of our ramp, well, kind of, but we'll get into the other conditional ramp spells in another section. We've got Solemn Simulacrum, classic sad robot, artifact creature. When he enters, search your library for basic land, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. When he dies, draw a card. Real good, real classic, good guy. Then we've got Elven Chorus. A little bit of a great card. I don't see this nearly as often as I think I should in Commander, but definitely one of the most powerful cards out of the Lord of the Rings set, especially if you're not thinking about the One Ring. So, into Elven Chorus, my bad. I can't speak today. is a 4 mana for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. And creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Especially once you get Koma out, you're going to have loads of Koma coils or loads of Komas. So the ability to use them in order to cast your spells is absolutely insane. Definitely something that is good, especially in a deck that's very mana heavy. Additionally, this turns a lot of those mana dorks that you may already have on the battlefield into tap to add 1 of any color instead of tap to add green. That can be really good since you are in a dual color deck. You know, you may have something that's double blue in your hand and only 1 island on the field. So that effect can be absolutely phenomenal. And last but not least, running this for a lot of the same reasons that we're running Elven Chorus for is Inga and Eska. Another wonderful card out of that Kaldheim set. This one's from March. So 4 mana gets you a creatures that you control have vigilance and tap to add 1 mana of any color that you can only spend to cast creature spells. We got a lot of creatures in this deck, so this is a lot of fast ramp. It's really good. Then, whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. So not only is this making mana dorks for you, but it's drawing you a card for casting those creature spells. A lot of your creature spells are more than 3 mana, so having that ability to use the creatures to cast the creatures is a great way to go. Definitely something that is really good in this deck. So definitely, if you're playing against this, one of those cards to look out for. And with that, we'll be moving on to our next section here. Section that we'll be covering, I like to call, oh no, not today, not in my house. And that is our removal section. Removal is a key part to any game of Commander, especially if you want to have a fun game of Commander. Those interactive games are what we're all looking for. So definitely spend a good amount of time on this. So the first spell that we'll talk about is classic rapid hybridization. 1 blue mana instant, destroy target creature, cannot be regenerated. That creature's controller puts a 3/3 green frog lizard onto the battlefield. Definitely really good. I mean, the ability to remove any big creature threat or any threat on the table and just be like, hey, that's a nice 3/3 green frog lizard you got there, is absolutely phenomenal. So definitely something that we need to keep in mind. After that, we've got classic Beast Within. If you've played against a green deck, you've probably seen this card cast, right? Destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast for 3 mana. Really good. Another classic here, Reclamation Sage. When this creature enters, it's 3 mana for a 2/1 elf shaman. When this creature enters, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. So definitely a great card in this deck. I mean, with the ability to make tokens of almost any creature that you play in this deck, this is definitely something that you want to have. I mean, the ability to make multiple copies of this, have multiples of it, trigger, is just absolutely insane. And we'll go along the same lines for this creature, Woodfall Primus. I love this card. I don't think this card sees enough play. For 5 and 3 green, you get a Treefolk Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent, and it's got Persist. So even if they find a way to deal with this 6/6 Trampler, it's going to come back with a -1/-1 counter, and you're going to destroy another non-creature permanent. If you make enough of these, I'm going to be honest, I've done it before in this deck, where you make loads of these in one turn, and suddenly your opponents have no more lands. It's funny how that works, but, you know, that's unfortunate. And while I wouldn't encourage that you just play it and start murking people's lands, I would say that there's definitely a good opportunity there to take over the game with this card. I mean, the ability to destroy any non-creature permanent, especially like as this game's gone on, there's more enchantments, more artifacts that have just become threats. So definitely looking for like those support cards as opposed to the standard here's my big green dumb creature, deal with it. So Woodfall Primus has just overperformed every time I've played in this deck. Then we got one of my favorite spells because I love watching people, put 2/2 green boars on the battlefield. For X and 2 blue for a sorcery, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token. This spell's absolutely amazing, especially with how much ramp we're running. I mean, this could easily clear the board and act as a board wipe. And you don't have many of those board wipes available in blue, unless you want to spend a good amount of money for something like maybe what's that card that always beats me? Yeah, that's it, Cyclonic Rift. So definitely, if you're playing against like those or looking for something that removes creatures, this is a great way to do it. And last in this little section of single target removal, we have Imprisoned in the Moon. This card's gotten a lot of reprints recently, so if you don't have a copy of it, I would recommend picking up a copy. If you're looking for a copy of it, I would recommend checking out Slice and Dice Game Cafe. You can find us on TCG Player. You can also find us in person down at South Bend, Indiana. But there's my other little plug. So definitely look into this card. It's been, like I said, it's been reprinted a lot. There's a lot of copies out there. So this is a great way to just really remove anything that's a problem. 2 mana in a blue for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap add colorless and loses all other card types and abilities. I love strapping this on people's commanders and just being like, fun fact. You ain't got nothing going on now. And especially in the meta today, where people are so focused on building into that commander, the game's become less about having a good deck and about how well your cards synergize or pump up your commander or just do better with your commander. So definitely something that if you're playing this, look to target that commander, and you can absolutely just take somebody out of the game with this single card. All right, on to a couple of mass removal spells that we got in this deck. First one is Whelming Wave. 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a return all creatures to their owner's hands except krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. This card is absolutely phenomenal in this deck. I mean, our commander's a serpent, so for 4 mana, you're looking at mostly a one-sided board wipe. Having Koma on the field with no other creatures is absolutely devastating. So definitely something that can pull you ahead and set your opponents back. One spell that I really like that I do not see played enough is Fade from History. 2 and 2 green for a sorcery. Each player who controls an artifact, enchantment creates a 2/2 green bear token. Then you destroy all artifacts and enchantments. This can really, really hurt people, especially if they're playing that like greedier style. Look at all my artifacts. I'm doing all these artifact things kind of decks. A big one that comes in mind right now is like Arabella. I mean, if your opponent's playing Arabella, this is 4 mana, remove Arabella and any like little artifact tokens that they may have. Definitely great. So this is one card that I would love to see getting played more, and something that I believe is underrated. All right, and last in our removal is our counter spells. We got a couple of good ones here and a couple, and one unique one. So let's go over some of the good ones. Flusterstorm. Recently just had the promo, so if you got one, phenomenal. Copy target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1 mana. Storm. And that's 1 blue for all that. This is just a solid card all the way around. I mean, I have had the unfortunate pleasure of playing against a lot of Storm decks. This is like, hey, you played your win con? Congratulations. Counter them all. Absolutely phenomenal card. Stops a lot of those strategies. It's hard to counter itself. Definitely something that I think should be played more. And then we've got a classic, one of my favorite counter spells, because it's got the white border on it. But classic counter spell, if you don't know this, you probably haven't been playing Magic very long, because this is one of the biggest cards in Magic history. It's 2 blue mana for a instant counter target spell. It's that good, and that's really all you need sometimes. Next, we have Flare of Denial. Flare of Denial is 1 colorless and 2 blue, and you get an instant that says you may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Most of the time you're not going to do that, but you may have one laying around and your opponent's casting something that's just so absurd that you need to get rid of it in that moment. This is where something like Flare Denial comes in. Even if it's got to be your commander or one of our other shapeshifters in the deck, it's better than losing the game. So that's typically the condition in which you're casting it for free. Besides that, you're making so much mana in this deck, odds are you're going to be able to just pay the 3 to counter that spell. And then one of my favorite cards in this deck, one of my favorite things to do, Sudden Substitution. 4 mana, 2 colorless and 2 blue for a split-second instant. Exchange control of target non-creature spell and target creature. Then the spell's controller may choose new targets for it. This is absolutely phenomenal. However you want to play it, you can take control of somebody's spell, and then you have this really, really funny interaction of, I'm taking your spell, I'm going to use it now, and I'm giving you a 3/3 Koma Coil. Absolutely backbreaking on that end, but you can also use it another way. You can cast a cheap spell, hold priority, and cast this on top, and you can give your opponent that cheap spell that may just draw them a card and gain control of their commander, their most powerful creature, something that's real scary. So in a way, this spell's got a lot of versatility and is one of my favorite quote-unquote counter spells. So that's how we're wrapping up our "oh no, not in my house" section. Next up on our list, we've got the section that I'm probably most excited for, called the "wait, that's not a Koma." Making copies of Koma can be real difficult because of the legendary rule. So one way that we could avoid that is through mutating Koma. If you don't know, mutate is a mechanic that started out in Ixalan and caused a ton of rules issues. But it's phenomenal in this deck because we can stack them on top and change Koma's name and creature type. So we'll start off here with Migratory Greathorn. 3 mana to mutate it. 4 mana to cast it regularly, but you want to pay that mutate cost. Mutate, you can cast the spell for its mutate cost, and you can put it over or under target non-human creature you own. they mutate into the creature on top, plus gain all the abilities from under it. So, the way something like this works is we have Koma on the battlefield, we cast our mutate card, and we decide to put it on top. Koma is now a 4-mana green beast. And since we mutated it, we're going to get this effect right here. Migratory Greathorn says when this creature mutates, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So it's another ramp effect. Definitely something that we're looking for, but it also does a great job of removing that legendary condition from Koma. A couple others that we're running are Parcel Beast. 4 mana up top, but the mutate's only 2, and you can pay 1 and tap it to look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it on the battlefield. If you didn't put a card onto the battlefield this way, put it into your hand. And then we're looking at Dreamtail Heron. 5 mana up top, 4 at the bottom. Flying whenever this creature mutates, draw a card. And another piece of semi-removal, the Pouncing Shore Shark. 5 mana up top, 4 for the mutate with flash. So you can mutate this one at instant speed. And whenever this creature mutates, you may return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So this can be really good to hold until an opponent's instep, flash it in over your Koma, and then, you remove one of theirs and start your turn with a non-legendary Koma. That's important. But yeah, that's our wait, this isn't a Koma anymore section. Talked about it a couple times now, but the goal of this deck is to make more Komas. Not necessarily more Koma coils, but just more Komas in general. So people may be asking, well, how are we doing that? Koma's legendary. That's going to be a hard thing to get around. And with those mutate cards and a couple other cards in the deck, you learn that, well, it's easier than you may have anticipated. A couple ways of getting around that, and we're going to call this section, ooh, more Komas, is Spark Double. 4 mana for a illusion. You may have Spark Double enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. And it is not legendary if that permanent is legendary. So this is a great way to get another Koma. And now that we got 2 Komas, we're making 2 Koma coils. We got Shakashima the Thousand Faces. Another phenomenal card. If you haven't played against this card, then, you've probably had some real fun games. Shakashima can come in, except it has this other ability down at the bottom. This is the legend rule does not apply to permanents you control. This lets us start copying Koma, start making more Komas, Komas on Komas on Komas. Along with Shakashima of 1,000 Faces, we have Shakashima the Imposter. This is the original Shakashima out of the Kamigawa block. So, 4 mana, you get a Shapeshifter, which lets you choose a creature and play. It becomes a copy of that creature, except its name is still Shakashima the Imposter. And unfortunately, it's still legendary, so this will only let you make another Koma once. But you get a return Shakashima to its owner's hand at the end of turn for 4 mana. It can be really good if you copy something early, then you have it come back and you can copy Koma again later. So definitely good. And then our last card getting away from that legendary rule and stopping us from having to worry about the Koma coils is Helm of the Host. 5 mana equip and a 4 mana cost, so 9 mana to start doing stuff with it. You get a legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token is not legendary. If equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste. Our goal is to strap this to Koma every single time, because every single combat of ours, we're then making another copy of our commander. And that value just starts stacking up on itself and absolutely backbreaking to our opponents. The next couple of cards that we're going to talk about are our classic shape shifters and what we have going on with our classic shape shifters. So we run 3 classic shapeshifters in this deck, and that is Clever Imposter. 4 mana, enters as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. Phyrexian Metamorph. 3 in a Phyrexian blue. You may have Phyrexian Metamorph enter as any artifact or creature on the battlefield. It's an artifact in addition to its other types. And our last one, Glasspool Mimic. This card's also great because if we're short-landed, we can play it as a land on the backside. Definitely a great card. Enters as a copy of a creature you control, except if it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. Alright, we're not done yet because we still have more ways to make more tokens and more copies. We're going to start with 2 of the best spells that I love to resolve in this deck. And the first one is Season of Weaving. A newer card out of the Bloom Barrow set. You get 5 paw prints when it enters. And you can choose up to 5... Well, let me back up. Let me just read the card. Alright. Choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. Whenever I play this, I'm almost always choosing to make a token that's a copy of an artifact or creature I control twice, and then I'm choosing to draw a card. Besides that, can also work as removal if you need it, and you've got return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. Also a great way to end the game. You play it, you return all their non-tokens, all your non-tokens to their owner's hands, and then you just swing on them with a ton of tokens. And then one of the most explosive copy spells in this deck, Rite of Replication. 2 and 2 blue for a sorcery with kicker 5. Create a token that's a copy of target creature. If the spell was kicked, create 5 of those tokens instead. If we already have a non-legendary copy of Koma, then this card goes insane. 9 mana for 5 7-drop creatures that are each making a 3/3 at the beginning of each each upkeep. Ooh, having a hard time today. At the beginning of each upkeep is absolutely insane. So definitely one of the most explosive cards in this deck. Alright, then we have a couple of token doublers. We're running Doubling Season. Good to pick up, especially with its recent reprint. But 5 mana for an enchantment that says, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many instead. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice as many on instead. And then we got another version of that that's less good. Primal Vigor. If 1 or more tokens would be created, create twice those tokens instead. If 1 or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature, twice that many are put on instead. The reason this isn't as good is because it also works for your opponents. So definitely something to look out for, something that you want to keep an eye on. And then, I might pronounce this wrong, but y'all are just going to have to bear with me, okay? Adrix and Nev, Twin Casters. 4 mana for a Merfolk Wizard with Ward 2. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many are created instead. So whether it's Koma coils or more Komas, definitely something that we want to keep in mind, because it can make a whole lot more. Then we've got all of that happening. Why don't we double up on those triggers with a Roaming Throne? We can have Roaming Throne come in, and we can name Serpent, and we can start doubling up on that upkeep trigger of making a Koma coil. So it's effectively like doubling it, but we're just getting another one. So definitely something that's great in this deck. If we have multiple Koma coils, then they're each triggering twice. That can get way out of hand way fast. And then we have a couple of newer or more interesting ways to copy things. Extravagant Replication. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of another target non-land permanent you control. One of the funniest things that you can do with this card is you can take Clever Impersonator and you can make a copy of this, and then each one of these can copy each other. So you can have multiple copies of this, and then just every turn you can start choosing different things to copy. So absolutely hilarious interaction, great interaction to have, and something that I personally love to see on my table. I'd hate to see it on somebody else's. So that's a good thing there. And then we've got those expensive tokens, so why don't we make more of them? With the brand new Koma World Eater out of Foundations. 3 generic, 2 green, and 2 blue. For another Serpent, this spell can't be countered. It's got Trample and Ward 4. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create 4 3/3 blue Serpent creature tokens named Koma's Coil. And it's an 8/12. This card can also be oppressive and backbreaking. It puts your opponents on a real fast clock. So definitely something that we want to keep in mind, and something that does a great job at being that oppressive piece. Our last big token card that we're playing here is Essex Fractoral Bloom. 4 generic, a green and a blue, for a fractal legendary creature with flying. The first time you would create one or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex Bloom and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. This is absolutely great, because if you're making a lot of Koma coils or making a lot of mainly a lot of Koma coils, you can choose for them to all become Koma Cosmos Serpents. If you've already found a way against that legendary rule, then all those are going to trigger. You're going to get more Koma coils every single turn. So you're really accomplishing the dream of oops, more Komas. And yeah, that's the oops, more Komas section. On to our next section, the section that I personally like, because I like drawing lots of cards, and drawing cards will always be good, and card advantage will always be good. We'll call this Give Me My Cards. That is Serum Visions. 1 blue, draw a card, scry 2. Great card. And then why don't we do the same thing but in reverse with Preordain. 1 blue, scry 2, then draw a card. And then we have a couple of really, really good cards here. Like Worldly Tutor. Search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, put it into your hand. This can be something to find Koma, to make Koma not legendary anymore. This can be removal, since we're running some removal spells in that slot. Just a good generic tutor in this deck. Then we've got a couple of cards that I love to play. We've got Windfall. This is really good if you're drawing cards. It's really good if your opponent's drawing cards. Each player discards their hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards that player discarded this way. A player discarded that way. If your opponent just decided to draw 22 lands, well, they can draw 22 more. But you're going to draw 22 with them. So, definitely something that I love doing. We've got Days Undoing in your hand. With a lot of mana, this is a card that is absolutely phenomenal. Since you're going to be able to cast almost all your spells, you can ensure that you're going to have a full grip next turn by making each player shuffle his or her hand and graveyard into their library, draw 7 cards, and then if it's your turn, end the turn. So, Days Undoing is a great card. Does everything you really want it to at the end of your turn. I love this card. Then, after that, we've got Return to the Wild Speaker. This can be a finisher in some circumstances, but for 4 and a green, most of the time, we're casting this at the end step of our opponent to draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Most likely it's going to be Koma at 6 power, so we'll draw 6 cards for 5 mana. Seems good to me. It can also be in a finisher because you can give non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until the end of turn. And let me tell you what, when those Koma coils are 6/6s and you have 82 of them on the battlefield, it's a bad day for your opponent. Next, after that, we've got a couple of real good draw spells that you may or may not see a whole lot, and that's Maul Drifter. This is a classic little blue elemental buddy right here. 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 2/2 with flying, and when Maul Drifter enters, draw 2 cards. You can evoke it for 3, and it's just comes in, dies, but you still get to draw 2 cards. So definitely something that's absolutely phenomenal. Then we have Pull from Tomorrow. I like this card a lot. X and 2 blue gets you an instant. Draw X cards, then discard a card. So, with the ability to make tons of mana, we can draw a whole lot of cards with this. And the price of discarding 1 is not that big of a deal. So, definitely something that I enjoy running in this deck. A unique card to this deck that I've really been enjoying is Farsight Ritual. 2 and 2 blue for an instant with Bargain. Bargain allows you to sack a artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast it. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. If this spell was bargained, look at the top 8 cards of your library. Put 2 of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom. This is just a solid instant. I mean, if you have Koma out, you're always looking at that top 8. Because getting rid of 1/3/3 when you're making 2, 3, 4 at the beginning of everyone's turn is pretty good. And looking at 8 cards and choosing 2 is just phenomenal card selection. So, definitely something I like. And then we're running our only Planeswalker in the deck, Vivian Reed. Look at the top 4 cards. Well, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. Here. Let's talk about what Vivian Reed does. You get 3 and 2 green for a Planeswalker Vivian. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or a land from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. That's its +1 loyalty ability. Really good. I mean, just the ability to dig is always going to be good. And then it's -3. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Pretty good. You're not using this most of the time. If you are, the game may be in a little rougher spot. You have a lot of removal built in the deck already. But what we're really playing this for is since Koma can tap things down, we have a lot of good protection, we have a lot of bodies, we have a lot of blockers. It's only a matter of time until we get to the emblem, which is -8. You get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Almost every single time I've played this card, I've been able to get it to that point. So, definitely um, a lot more likely. I mean, we're also running doubling season in the deck, so it's very easy to get doubling season, Vivian Reed, with all the other card draw that we have, and then you're just like, hey, I'm gonna play this Vivian Reed. Yeah, my creatures are huge now. Oh yeah, and that indestructible thing, all my creatures have it. So definitely something that's easy and able to do in this deck. Also, another sync for all that big mana that we have is Genesis Wave. This card can be absolutely backbreaking because you're just putting out so much stuff so quickly. And I mean, it's scary how much stuff we can put out in this deck off of this single Genesis Wave. Genesis Wave, if you don't know it, it's X and 3 green. Whoa, smack the camera there. Whoa, my bad, y'all. My bad. All right. X and 3 green. For a sorcery, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put all cards that weren't put on the battlefield into your graveyard. Um, a phenomenal card. A phenomenal card. I mean, I can't speak highly about this enough. You get a lot of your value cards out of this. We have a lot of little shapeshifters, a lot of little cards that just want to be on the battlefield. So definitely something that I enjoy playing. Um, One of our most oppressive cards because it allows us to punish people for letting us have coma coils is, oh, I'm gonna get this word wrong, Verity Circle. If I pronounce that wrong, then let me know. Give me a little way to pronounce it in the comment section. Cause you know I can't pronounce words. All right, I'm not an English teacher. 3 mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent control becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And then you can pay 5 to tap target creature without flying. This card's phenomenal in this deck. I mean, you sack a Koma Coil, you draw a card. Sack a Koma Coil, draw a card. Absolutely phenomenal. And then we have 2 spells that we're using to get stuff back from our graveyard. The first one is Noxious Revival. Classic card. 1 Phyrexian green for an instant. Put target card from a graveyard on top of its owner's library. It's also really good if your opponent's playing Reanimator. You can throw off their whole strategy. You can be like, hey, that big creature you got sitting in your graveyard, nah, it's going to be a dead card in your hand for a couple turns. But also a phenomenal card in the case that something that you had got destroyed and you need it back. And then we're running Green Warden Marasa. Green Warden Marasa. 4 and 2 green for a 5/4 elemental. When this creature enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to hand, and when it dies, you may exile it. If you do, return target card from your graveyard to hand. A lot of people are just going to be trying to board wipe you over and over again, especially when you're making all those 3/3s. So, letting this card die is only going to benefit you in some way. So, definitely good card advantage in this stack. And with that said, we'll move on to our next section, and that'll be a couple of cards that I really like just for the value. All right, for this next section, like I said, we're talking about that value, baby. I said I got 3 cards set here on the side, And we're going to pump out that value train. Here we go. Choo-choo. Watch out. Here we come. We've got Mercfiend Liege. A great card. Classic blue-green card. 2 mana and then 3 hybrid blue-greens for a 4/4 horror. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. Untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each player's untap step. With things like Elven Chorus and the Ibna and Eska, and also the mana dorks that we're running, the ability to untap those and continue using that mana is extremely good, especially for those counter spells, maybe that flash creature that we got in here. So definitely getting a lot of value off this guy. And buffing our Koma coils up to 4/4s and buffing our original Koma up to a 8/8 is scary enough. Especially since we're giving it pseudo vigilance. It's really good. And we're making a lot of tokens. So in this value section, we're running Combine Chrysalis? I don't know. One of you guys figure it out and let me know how to say that word. 2 mana, a green and a blue for an artifact. Creature tokens you control have flying. That's really all we care about on this card. However, we do have 2, a green and a blue, to sacrifice a token and create a 4/4 green beast creature token. And we can only activate that as a sorcery. Then we've got our Watchful Radstag. Green card out of the Fallout set. Definitely something that I love in this deck. For that 3 mana, you're getting an Elk Mutant that evolves. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. And then whenever it evolves, create a token that's a copy of it. This card gets out of hand really fast because the Koma coils that you're making are 3/3s. So every upkeep, you're not only making a Koma coil, but you're making a copy of this Radstag. It's absurd. It gets out of hand really quickly. If you have something that's doubling those tokens, then this just becomes absolutely insane. You'll have 2 of them enter that very next turn. You'll have 4 of them enter that very next turn, 8 of them, so on and so forth. This is hands down one of the scariest sleeper cards in this deck. But along with scariest cards in the deck, let's talk about my favorite card in this deck, and one that I think a lot of people are going to frown for me having in here. All right, that last card in this deck. Are you ready for this? Because a lot of people aren't going to be happy that it's in here. And a lot of people don't like playing against this card. Is World Slayer. 5 mana artifact equipment. When this creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer. It costs 5 to equip. So let's talk about this card for a second. We're running this card because with Koma, you have the ability to give Koma indestructible until the end of turn. So when you've got this going on and you attack with it, deals the combat damage, you can say bye-bye permanents to everything except for this World Slayer. And what you're going to do in response to this trigger, you're going to hold that priority. You're going to sacrifice a Serpent, and you're going to choose to give Koma indestructible. So then these 2 are going to stick around. You won't have any lands, but it won't matter. All right? Having a ton of 3/3s is just as good. It'll go to the next turn. Your opponent will probably do nothing. You'll make a 3/3. It'll go to the next turn. That opponent probably not doing nothing. You'll make a 3/3, and so on and so forth. It'll get back to your turn, and you'll be rocking and rolling with all them 3/3s. And then next turn, swing with them all, don't swing with them all. Maybe you equip this to a coil so you don't have to deal with it either. But if I were you, I'd strap it back on and I'd swing with everybody. Send them all to the graveyard again. So yeah, this can be really oppressive. I mean, most of the time, if you connect with this and you give Koma indestructible, your opponents are just going to scoop there on the spot. So definitely something that's good, something that's great. And yeah, that's my favorite card in the deck. I know a lot of y'all probably hate me for it. If you do, let me know. If you don't, then hey, let me know that you're just as degenerate as I am. And that is basically my Koma deck. I'll talk a little bit about the lands just for a second, but there's really not anything crazy going on with the lands. I run a lot of basics, so we have a decent amount of basic forest in the deck. I find that these days a lot of people are real greedy with their lands, and they just end up getting punished by a lot of usual cards. Blood Moon, back to basics, anything like that. And that's going to just really, really make sure that you get to stay in the game, even if those cards are being punished. We're running a good amount of islands too, so definitely a lot of those. One card that I would be looking at, we got Exotic Orchard, Terramorphic Expanse, Temple of Mystery, Overflowing Basin. A lot of people don't like the filter lands. I think the filter lands are fine. I don't know why people hate them, but that's fine. Ash Barrens. All right. Basic land cycling will always be good. You're thinning your library, getting that card out, making sure you got the land drop. Great card. Reliquary Tower, for obvious reasons. No maximum hand size, always good. Yavimaya Coast. A little pain in the game. Just a versatile land. I mean, the pain lands are always good. I love the pain lands, so definitely something that's great. Path of Ancestry. Enters tapped. Tap it for your commander's color identity. Whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry one. I have grown akin to putting a copy of this in every single one of my decks that are 2 or more colors, because worst case scenario, when I cast my commander, I will scry a card. And I just think that's really good value for a land entering tapped. Rejuvenating Springs. Myriad Landscape. Another great ramp card, especially since we just need more and more lands to continue casting our cards. Evolving Wilds. We've seen it once, we've seen it a million times. And Command Tower. So that's our land base. That's the Koma deck in a nutshell. Give me a little breather here and we'll get to the outro. All right, everybody, that's the deck tech for Koma Cosmos Serpent. Hope you enjoyed it. Really do. If you could, please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, turn that little bell off so you know when we're uploading more. Hopefully we got some big things planned for the future here, recording some gameplay videos. Maybe you'll see this deck and see it make all those Koma coils and Komas that we were talking about. So definitely keep an eye out on that. And again, another huge thank you to Slice and Dice Game Cafe for providing me with everything I need, including some grape soda, food, and a great space to play. Again, super excited that I could come talk to y'all about this deck today, and hopefully we'll be showing off some other people's decks on this channel, not just mine. Hopefully we're able to start recording and pushing out some more content for you guys. So, with that being said, have a great, wonderful day, and that's all for us. Goodbye.